Amid the ongoing controversy surrounding the investigation connected to Jeffrey Epstein, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has publicly criticized the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, arguing that the agency has failed to provide sufficient transparency and timely clarity regarding key aspects of the case. Her criticism centers not only on the perceived pace of the investigation, but also on what she characterizes as unanswered questions about financial networks, institutional accountability, and the scope of prosecutorial decisions. By speaking out, Crockett positions herself within a broader movement in Congress calling for heightened oversight of federal law enforcement agencies, particularly when investigations intersect with individuals of significant wealth, influence, or political proximity. Crockett's remarks suggest that the issue extends beyond a single criminal case and into the structural integrity of federal institutions. She has emphasized the importance of public confidence in the justice system, arguing that transparency is essential when handling matters that have generated widespread public concern. In an increasingly polarized political environment, her call to follow the money reframes the conversation from isolated acts of wrongdoing to a deeper examination of financial flows, decision-making processes, and potential systemic blind spots. This approach elevates the debate into a broader political discussion about congressional oversight, institutional credibility, and the balance between prosecutorial discretion and democratic accountability.
We've done something that the Department of Justice has failed to do. We have actually sat down and listened, not once, not twice, but on multiple occasions to the survivors. As you saw last week, AG Bondi wouldn't even turn and look at the survivors, let alone allow her DOJ to do their job, which is to investigate. So here we are as the legislative branch doing our jobs and trying to do oversight. Let me tell you, the survivors have said over and over and over, follow the money. That was the one thing that they told us, as well as their attorneys, follow the money. Well, we're following the money, but I'm going to be perfectly honest with you and tell you that we are running into dead ends at this moment. On yesterday, I was asked about this particular deposition and what I anticipated I would hear. As a trained attorney and litigator, once they told me he wasn't taking the fifth, I thought that the record would be full of I don't remembers. I will tell you that once this record comes out, you will see that you most likely will be left with more questions than answers. It is almost inconceivable to be missing the amounts of money that are missing, and somehow Mr. Wexner have no idea. The other thing that I want you to pay attention to, because again, as a trained litigator, think about some of the themes that we keep hearing. We know that there were supposedly these fraudulent modeling agencies that were set up all over the country, and girls would go in thinking that they were going to get their chance at modeling. Victoria's Secret. We know Victoria's Secret was known specifically for their fashion shows. We know that there are reports of girls that went in thinking that they were potentially going in to model. These are not coincidences. There's two things that have been clear, is that there were always young girls seemingly looking for an opportunity to model, and there were always rich and powerful people on the other side, dangling a carrot, saying, I will give you the life that you're seeking. Yet ultimately, the stories are the same. They're stories of abuse. They're stories of trafficking at the highest level. And I will tell you one thing that was remembered for sure was when asked about Donald Trump and Epstein, and whether or not they had been in the same room and what that looked like. He didn't quite remember, but he imagined that yes, that possibly happened, because he did remember that Donald Trump also would like to show up to the Victoria's Secret runway shows. Now, that was a little odd to him, he said, because Donald Trump was not engaged in fashion whatsoever. But he does recall that. He also said something that I feel like we've heard over and over and over, which is that Epstein liked to drop people's names. So he'd imagine that that may have been one of the names that he dropped. Listen, I want the American people, but more specifically, I want the survivors and anyone who is struggling right now to know that we see you, we feel you, and we are fighting for you. We will not stop. if Mr. Wexner is honest about his intentions in helping us, then we're asking him, if he doesn't remember, then go ahead and turn over all of your financial records, because we need to follow the money, because that is exactly what the survivors told us to do. And we know that the Department of Justice is either inadequate or just not interested in doing justice as it relates to this particular scenario. We in America deserve better. We are looking around the country and we're seeing CEOs that are having to leave their own companies. We're seeing people that are having to leave their board positions. We're seeing princes being dethroned. We're seeing all kinds of stuff everywhere except for right here at the highest levels of federal government. Whether we're talking about Donald Trump himself or whether we're talking about Secretary Lutnick, and the list goes on. We deserve better in this country.
We have done something that the Department of Justice has failed to do. We sat down and listened to the survivors, not once, not twice, but multiple times. We gave them space to speak, we looked them in the eye, and yet, as the country saw last week, Attorney General Bondi would not even turn to acknowledge the survivors in the room, let alone ensure that her department fully investigated their claims. That is unacceptable. When the executive branch falls short, the legislative branch has a constitutional duty to conduct oversight. That is exactly what we are doing. The survivors and their attorneys have been consistent in one clear directive: follow the money. That has been their message from day one, so we are following the money. But I will be honest, we are running into roadblocks. When I was asked about the recent deposition and what I expected to hear, I said that as a trained attorney and litigator, once I learned the witness was not invoking the Fifth Amendment, I anticipated a record filled with, "I don't remember." And when that record becomes public, I believe Americans will find themselves with more questions than answers. It strains credibility to suggest that enormous sums of missing money can simply go unexplained. There's also a troubling pattern that cannot be ignored. We have heard repeatedly about fraudulent modeling agencies operating across the country, where young women were led to believe they were being offered legitimate opportunities, sometimes connected to high-profile fashion brands and runway shows. These are not random coincidences. The common thread is always the same: young girls seeking opportunity on one side, and wealthy, powerful individuals promising access and advancement on the other. The outcome, tragically, is also the same: allegations of abuse and trafficking at the highest levels. When questions arise about associations between powerful figures and Jeffrey Epstein, the responses are often vague: partial memories, uncertainty, name-dropping. We hear that certain individuals may have appeared at events, that names were casually mentioned, that relationships were unclear. This pattern of selective memory does little to inspire public confidence. If there is nothing to hide, then full transparency should not be a burden. That includes financial records. If someone truly does not remember, then let the documents speak for themselves. To the survivors and to the American people, I want to say this clearly: we see you, we hear you, and we will continue this fight. Accountability cannot depend on status, wealth, or political proximity. Across the country, we have seen executives step down, board members resign, and public figures face consequences. Yet too often, it feels as though accountability stops at the highest levels of federal power. That cannot stand. In a democracy, no one is above scrutiny, and justice must apply equally, especially when public trust is at stake.